Hi and welcome to Computer Music Magazine's first look at Logic Pro 10, or Logic Pro X as some people prefer to call it. This is going to be a really informal overview of the new features, and it's just to give you some of our first impressions and to show you how some of the new stuff works. We've broken this video into sections, and if you check out the description below, you'll find links so that you can jump straight to the part you want to see. Just to be clear, this is not a review, but we are working on a full review and we're testing out the features in real production situations. You'll be able to read this review in Computer Music issue 195. We're also preparing a big tutorial that will show you how to get the most out of Logic Pro 10's new features, complete with lots of videos, and that will be in Computer Music 196. Okay, so let's check out Logic Pro 10. The most striking and obvious change for Logic Pro 10 is of course the brand new interface. It's got a completely brand new look, a new colour scheme that's kind of reminiscent of Adobe products like Audition and Premiere, and the new icons have got a much more bold and chunky kind of style to them that's very reminiscent of modern Apple products and even iPad apps and things like that. As many people have pointed out, there's quite a few similarities to GarageBand in there now. For instance, you've got these volume and pan controls right there on the track headers. If we go to synth track, there's a arpeggiator logo that's just the same as the one in GarageBand on the iPad. If we make a little bit of MIDI in the new MIDI editor, it's been slightly revised and there's now quantize and velocity sliders built into this inspector, which you get on GarageBand as well. The transport LCD, again, it's been revised, it's a lot more bold and clear and it looks like the one in GarageBand. The library has been spruced up and it now has images for all the things inside it. Unlike GarageBand, the library has moved over to the left-hand side and the transport has been moved to the top. We're kind of expecting that there's going to be a new version of GarageBand at some point and that will have these same changes built into it. However, the loop library and the media thing are still over on the right-hand side, just as they always were. There's a few things that have been renamed. For instance, the Hyper Editor is now called the Step Editor, but it's basically the same thing. But as far as we can tell, nothing's actually been removed from Logic Pro 10, and even the environment is still there if you want to mess around with that. But one big change is that you can now only use 64-bit audio units plugins within Logic, so if you have plugins that are 32-bit only, you won't be able to use them in Logic Pro 10. One new feature that's really going to help newcomers to Logic Pro and old-timers who just want to spruce up their knowledge is the Quick Help system up here. This is a pop-out window. I mean, you can place it wherever you want if you don't like the default placement. And whatever you put the mouse over, it will give you a little bit of advice on that. And if you press Apple and the / it will take you to the relevant part of the manual so you can read more about it. So the revised interface of Logic is going to divide opinion, we think, but overall we're quite impressed with what we've seen here. It's a lot more cohesive and generally more modern than the Logic Pro 9 interface. Track stacks are new for Logic Pro 10 and they come in two types. First of all, there are folder stacks, which are much like the folders that Logic already had and similar to folder tracks in other applications. And they're basically for organising things. As you can see here in this Logic Pro 10 demo song, there's a synth stack and you can manipulate the whole thing using the single region, but if you fold it out you'll see there's actually tons and tons of different bits of synths in there. Much more interesting are summing stacks, and here the output is summed directly to the main track of the summing stack itself, so you can apply effects to the whole lot. You can use the summing stacks to make, for instance, layered synth sounds or any kind of layered instrument sounds. So let's have a look. Here we've got the classic brass pad, and we'd like to combine it with a AU instrument. So we add a track, a software instrument. We'll choose Cable Guy's Curve 2 CM, which is a free synth that comes with Computer Music Magazine. Let's have a look in the library. Go for the Play Waves preset. Okay, so we've got two different sounds. We'd like to combine them, so all we have to do is select both tracks at once, right click and create a track stack, select the summing stack. And now we can play them both at once. So now we can apply effects to each layer, and we can even use Logic's new MIDI effects. So let's use the transposer on the second track to bring it into a better register so we can hear it more clearly. Now if you wanted to apply something globally, you can put it on here, you can put it, apply the compressor that comes ready mapped to it. And you could apply a bit of EQ to bring out the top perhaps. And if you want to, you can save that whole setup as a patch in the library, so you can call it whatever you want and save it for later recall. And there are patches in the library now that are using this stacked system, such as the drum kits, the producer kits that we're going to talk about later, for instance, use stacks to facilitate their multiple outputs. Smart controls allow you to control multiple parameters of multiple plugins within a track or a stack, a bit like the quick controls in Cubase or the macros in Ableton Live. All of the patches in the library come with ready-made smart controls, and if you resize the window, the smart controls resize with it. And these provide like a easy selection of controls for manipulating the sound. A lot of the synthesizers have very similar looking controls, but different kinds of instruments have suitable graphics for the smart controls. Here's the stacked synth that we made earlier using track stacks, and you can see here it's got the default compression and EQ smart controls set up. And we can use those if we want to dial in some basic EQ. But what we'd really like to do is customize it to change what the knobs do, and you can do this using the inspector. So if we right click on the HPF knob, we can see it's already assigned to something, and we can easily delete the mappings. And let's say we want to use that knob to control the amount of reverb on the Curve 2 CM layer. If we just go in there, we've already got a reverb set up on there, and we'd like to control the mix amount on there. So if we go back up here and select our knob, we can go down here, Curve 2 CM, Silververb, and select the mix. And now that knob will control the mix amount. You can also adjust the range that each knob affects in the underlying plugin. And of course, if you want to access the plugin that it actually controls underneath, you can right click the knob and it will just pop it up. So you can also easily get at the compressor or the EQ or whatever those knobs are controlling. You can always access it. It doesn't take away any functionality or hide anything from you. There's a selection of smart controls layouts that you can choose from, and you can set these up how you like. Although it seems that you can't actually design a smart controls layout completely from scratch, so we don't know if that's going to be added at some point, but it would be pretty cool. One of the coolest things about the smart controls is that if you're using the Logic Remote app on your iPad, which is a free app, the smart controls appear exactly as you've configured them in Logic, and you can control them remotely using your touchscreen. Logic Pro 10 includes virtual drum kits and also virtual drummers that will play the kits for you. But let's first talk about drummer. To get going, all you have to do is add a new track and select the drummer option. By default, you get two 8-bar regions, and each can be resized and have its own settings. And of course, you can add as many of these regions as you like to create a structure for your song, so each one can have a different style of drumming. You could have one playing on the hi-hat, one on the cymbals, and all that kind of thing. Double-clicking a region brings up the drummer editor down here. And over on the left, you have a choice of 4 broad styles. There's rock, alternative, songwriter, and R&B. So it's basically focused on rock, pop, and funk playing. And the lack of styles, like jazz, for instance, is a bit of a letdown. Next, you can choose a drummer within that style, and each drummer has their own playing approach and a favoured drum kit. So here's rock drummer Max, and we can hear how he sounds. So each drummer has their own kit and style of playing. To control the rhythm that the drummer plays, you can either select a preset, alternatively, you can use the controls to influence the rhythm yourself. So there's an XY pad here, which is very reminiscent of the GarageBand for iPad Smart Drums, and ranges from soft playing to loud playing. Simple. Complex. You can also select which parts of the drum kit to play on. For instance, if you want to play on the hi-hat or the cymbals, on the toms, or maybe you'd like to leave out the kick. And these other sliders are used to govern the complexity of the playing. Also have a swing control, so you can dial in swinging groove if you need it. And if you want more fills in the playing, you can turn this up. You'll see that the part is reflected in the region itself. Although it looks like a WAV file, it's actually it's MIDI underneath. And you can drag this off onto the track there, and it's just MIDI underneath, so you can use it to power anything you like. In fact, you can do this directly in the drummer track. You can change the drum kit designer instrument for any instrument you like. You can also make the kick and snare follow the rhythm of another track in your project, which simulates the way that a real drummer will often lock the kick and snare in with the other instruments. So here we've got a bass line. So if we turn on this the follow mode here, we can select which track we'd like the kick and snare to follow. So you can hear it syncs up a lot better with the bass line there. This is with it turned off. You can hear the kick and the bass line aren't really playing together. So far we've looked at the virtual drummer, but let's check out the kits. You can access these via the drum kit designer instrument that we mentioned earlier, and the standard mode is default stereo mode, and it's fairly basic, and you can change the drums, but each one here has a fairly nondescript, non-techy name, and you get basic controls for tuning. And there's a damping control as well. It seems to be some kind of treble filter. Serious producers will be looking for a more fine-grained control than this, and the easiest way to get at this is to head to the library, into the drum kits area, and go for the producer kits instead of the standard ones. And let's just load up the Bluebird to start off with. And you can see this is a track stack, and if we unfold it, we'll see that each of the tracks, the multi-mic drums, has a separate channel. So let's just drag some of the MIDI out of there and mute the original drummer track. If we open up the instrument for the first channel, now we can see we have the full selection of all the kick drums that are available, all the snare drums, and they've got sensible names now that drummers will understand. And you can mix and match any of them here, and you also get controls for things like the leakage, overhead and room mics. This seems to switch in a different room sound, so it's a little bit more control going on there. As far as sound quality goes, these kits do sound excellent upon first listen, but we'll have to do a lot more testing to determine whether they really hold up to the likes of BFD and Superior Drummer. As far as plugins go, Logic Pro 10 has some pretty cool stuff to offer. First up, there's the Retro Synth, which is an all-new synth. Seems to sound very good. It's nothing too surprising here if you're familiar with virtual analog synthesis. And you have 4 different types of synthesis up here. You've got analog mode, I guess this is some kind of analog sync related mode, and over here it gets a bit more interesting with PPG kind of looking digital. So this is a wavetable based synth, and you can select from all these different wave shapes that are in the tables and modulate through them in typical wavetable style. And there's an FM style synth, which is obviously stealing the look of the classic 80s synths here. One thing it does do rather well is makes FM quite easy to use and accessible, not too complicated, and yeah, it sounds very nice, and with really good accompaniment to the new synthesis, the new arpeggiator, which has just been added for Logic Pro 10. So if we select suitable sound on the synth, we can have a little play with that too. The simple analog lead should do. And yeah, let's turn the arpeggiator on and have a little play around here. So you got your normal upwards, downwards, up and down, converging, and this kind of shuffly one. And this option at the end means that the notes are sounded in the order that you play them. You can also choose from a bunch of variations. and set the octave range. There's a bunch of other options in the menus here. Anyway, as you can see, this seems to be quite comprehensive, and there's quite a lot going on here that we'll get into properly in our review. The keyboard instruments such as the electric piano have been updated for Logic Pro 10, and as well as accessing them via the smart controls. This spruced up the proper interface as well. Logic Pro 9 introduced the guitar amp designer, and now there's a bass amp designer as well. So here's how it sounds. Anyway, it certainly looks very good. We're going to have to get into this one in more detail though during our review process to really get to the bottom of it. The new Flex Pitch feature follows on from Logic Pro 9's Flex Time, now allowing you to edit the pitch of notes in a monophonic recording. We've got a project here with some vocals in it that sound good, but they could do with a bit of tuning, so we're going to use this to demonstrate Flex Pitch.
Can you feel it? Can you feel it? Whoa, whoa.
A basic form of Flex Pitch can be used directly in the tracks by clicking on the Flex Pitch icon above the track area. And here, make sure to select the Flex Pitch mode instead of one of the Flex Time modes. And now you can adjust the note pitch directly using the bars, and the vertical position of these indicates how far off of a perfect pitch that the notes are. You can see here these ones are quite far off pitch, they're very flat, so if we drag them back up, and let's compare. This is how it sounds without Flex Pitch.
Can you feel it?
It's kind of flat.
Can you feel it?
If you're feeling lazy, you can just right click and set all to perfect pitch. That will bang all the notes to the nearest whole tone.
Can you feel it? Can you feel it? Whoa, whoa.
And if you don't like what you've done there, you can just set them all back to the original pitch. And this can also be done on a per note basis, so you can just right click a single note and set it to perfect pitch. For more serious work, you'll turn to the audio track editor. And here you get a more traditional pitch editing view where you have more editing options. You can adjust the
Can you feel it?
start and end pitch of a note
Can you feel it?
to add or emphasize or eliminate slides into and out of notes. You can also adjust the amount of vibrato as well that's applied to a note, so you could increase or decrease the vibrato.
Can you feel it? Can you feel it?
So you can get some unusual effects with that if you want, and you can also adjust the formant of individual notes to change their tone, which can be quite useful sometimes if you've got a higher note, perhaps like this one here.
Whoa, whoa.
If you're not keen on the kind of tonality that higher vocal produces, you can use the formant shift to adjust the tone of it.
Whoa, whoa. Whoa, whoa.
And of course you can edit the pitch just like you could in the other view. As you can see, when it's bang in tune, it kind of fills up the box. Or you can just move it by whole tones if you want to completely change the melody.
Can you feel it? Can you feel it?
While there's absolutely nothing innovative here, it's a slick implementation of a standard audio editing procedure, and it seems to sound really good too, but we'll find out how well it really stacks up against Auto-Tune and friends in our review. Groove tracks are a feature that's kind of borrowed from GarageBand, and it's a simple way to make tracks adhere to the groove of one master track. So if you have drums that are playing a swing or a shuffle beat, you usually want your other instruments to also be playing that kind of groove, otherwise it'll sound a bit out of time. And also just in general, if you've got a drummer who's really tight, but the other instrumentalists aren't quite as tight and they're kind of not locked in with the drummer, it doesn't always sound so good. So Groove Tracks aims to take care of that problem in a really simple and easy way. So let's have a quick look at how it's done. And here we've got a drummer track, a guitar track, and a bass track. And these are just Apple loops we've used here and the new drummer instrument. And if we have a listen, we can hear that it sounds okay and the notes go together, but the timing is kind of off. It doesn't sound like a tight professional band. Okay, so to use Groove Tracks is very easy. You just put your mouse over here and you can see the star appear, and the track that you want to be the master groove track, you click, and then you have these checkboxes, and for the other tracks that you want to stick to that groove, you just enable them like this. So if we listen back, it should now be a little bit tighter. Okay, let's just switch it off now. Right now, we're not completely sure how much control that you have over the results, but if you click on the clip, you can see that it's using flex time to adjust the groove. So we're hoping that there will still be a way to edit the groove for more advanced users in case you're not quite happy with what it's done, or you want some parts to be looser or tighter and so on. So that's the end of our first look at Logic Pro 10. Check out the review in Computer Music 195 and look out for our huge guide to Logic Pro 10 in Computer Music 196.